who is Creator, Christ, and Comforter. Amen. Yay! Week 2 of this 7-week series of the 7-8 C's from Brian McLaren's book, The Story We Find Ourselves In, streaming Facebook Live, thanks Mike Miracle. It is my hope that in this series we begin to correct the terrible job of educating people in the biblical story, that is the overarching story from the complete Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Last week we talked about creation and how wonderful and beautiful this creation is. So what happened next? Crisis. There was crisis, as good as any soap opera or telenovela can imagine. We have heard 4 powerful stories from the Bible's First Testament out of the dozens of stories we could have pulled to explain what's happened from the moment people came into being on the earth. We were part of God's plan. We were created in God's image to steward and manage this amazing planet on which we live. And if we examine this first book of the Bible, of Genesis from chapter 2 forward, we see something very familiar in how human beings reacted by being created in God's image. We didn't like it. Not one little bit. We don't want to steward and manage this planet. We want to use, abuse, control, and dominate this planet and all life on it. Or as the poet William Ernst Hensley said in his poem Invictus, "It matters not how strait the gate, how changed with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." In other words, O divine creator of this and all that was and is and will be, I am God and you are not. From early in our human development on to today, it's been about this battle between being gods, that is with capital G and apostrophe, belonging to God and this whole planet, and being gods, small g, thinking that we are ultimately in control. The serpent in the Garden of Eden tempted both Adam and Eve with the ideas that they would be like God. And that's been our struggle ever since. What a crisis. We want to be gods. We want dominion and complete control of the world. We think we have a better way of doing things, a bigger understanding of how life should be, ultimately turning this planet into a terrible place filled with terrible people. So much so that, as legend has it, God was very sad that God had created all of this beauty, and people too. The world was flooded. Crisis. Floods occurred, have occurred, will continue to occur. People die in floods. It's all terribly sad and very, very scary if you've ever lived through one. The same can be said about earthquakes, hurricanes, fires, tornadoes. And if the truth be told, there are dozens of flood stories in ancient writings, some of them dating back before our story was written in Genesis. Well, why would that be so? Well, obviously, something terrible happened on this planet, just like terrible things are happening on this planet today. And just like today, those ancient people wrote about it. They told their tales to remind us what? Number 1, that nature is still stronger than the will of humans. Number 2, that we are made of the same stardust that the rest of this planet is made of. Number 3, that God is God and we are not. Number 4, something else. No matter how much we understand how our planet works, we still cannot harness the power of nature. We are gods, that is, belonging to God, and we are part of this planet, not gods, with the ability to control nature. Moving on through the course of history, we managed to build civilizations, and learn to build things not using what just nature supplied, but also doing what this next Bible story tells us. We made bricks. Now, brick is a marvelous technological development. Bricks stack neatly, not like rocks or even logs. We can make them uniform in size, and we can build tall structures to protect ourselves like never before from the elements and from our enemies. Brick making makes us like God. We can control our environment. A little more. Language barriers begin to divide us as we move out of Mother Africa and develop cities and civilizations, forgetting once again that we are all a part of this planet, made from the same stardust that formed this earth billions of years ago. We decide which civilization is best. We decide which cities will survive and which will be destroyed. We think we are in control. We are gods, masters of our own fate, captains of our own destiny, until our community is destroyed. Not even technology can save us. Crisis. The first story you heard this morning is of King David and Bathsheba. This is a story of ultimate power. Lord Acton said, "Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely." David had absolute power. David had united the whole 12 tribes of Israel into one kingdom. Jerusalem was now established as its capital city, and life was good. David was the new nation's beloved king of Israel with ultimate power. He had 8 wives already, and yet he wanted Uriah's wife, and so he took her because he could. Lust is a mighty force with which to reckon. It has driven men and women to do horrible things. Crisis. David knew better, and he knew that he had totally messed up. He tried to cover up his mess, all to no avail. Nathan, the prophet, called on him, and David begged God for forgiveness. And of course, our loving God granted forgiveness. However, the consequences of his mess, they went on to include the death of the child in this indiscretion. Absolute power. Crisis? Most of us don't have the absolute power of King David. That said, I truly believe most of us have more power than we think. Crisis after crisis, in the overarching story of the Bible, and quite frankly, in the overarching story of each and every one of our lives, when we forget that we are God's most glorious creation, created and called by God into a partnership to manage and steward this beautiful planet on which we live, we make a mess of things. We make a mess of things when we try to be God's, small g, and not live as God's, capital G with the apostrophe. I wonder, do you wonder, how many more crises can this planet manage? The stakes are higher than they've ever been. July's number of people on this earth is 7.7 billion with a B. We all live on this small marble of a planet, thinking we are God's, small g. God help us. Let's pray. Eternal, loving, patient Creator, we are a mess. We so often forget that we are part of your creation, not the be-all, do-all, end-all of it. Remind us this week that you are God. and we are not. Empower us this week to see this planet with your love-filled eyes, to work this week with your love-filled hands, and to be your love-filled heart wherever we are.